this may stir up some very painful stuff. Nobody from complex trauma is free of shame. Everybody from complex trauma has some shame. Now, what I want you to understand is shame, by definition, is not an emotion. It is a core belief about yourself, about who you think you are. There will be emotions that go with that we call shame emotions, but at its core, by definition, shame is a core belief. And so what shame means is I have a negative view of myself. I see myself as not having a lot of value, not being very lovable. Therefore, I see myself as not being good enough, and therefore less than others around me. I would say 100% of people with complex trauma have some shame. The greater the complex trauma, the greater the shame, but everybody with complex trauma has some shame. In other words, complex trauma affects your core belief about your identity. What emotions does that then create when they're made to feel not valuable, not lovable, not good enough? Well, you can imagine there's pain, lots of it. There's fear. Will anybody want me? Will anybody respect me? And so they have a lot of anxiety now as they make friends. A lot of insecurities are now there. Many with shame become depressed because they don't like themselves. Life sucks. They hate themselves. They are very hard on themselves. Some begin self-harming behaviors because they hate themselves so much. They find out there's a lot of anger in there. They're jealous of anybody that has more attention than them. They're envious of what everybody else has. They get very negative about themselves and everybody else, and they're very discontent. And for some, they get to a place where they feel hopeless. I am a total screw up. I don't see any way out of this. What's the point? So what I want you to understand is shame does nothing but produce negative emotions, and powerful negative emotions. Not mild ones, but powerful ones. And so the emotional world of a shame-based person is predominantly negative emotions. And that is a difficult thing to live with, because what happens with shame is you don't know how to fix it. You find no way to resolve it, so there's no way to resolve the negative emotions. But let me add one more piece here. So what happens to a child is, if I do something that's below the standard, okay? So let's say I go to school with a big pimple. I am going to be made to feel ugly, and that'll feed my shame, but it won't stop there. I'm going to get teased. I'm going to get a new nickname. I'm going to get made fun of. And so shame isn't just a package all by itself. Shame also has other emotions or other things that people do to you that hurt. So pain doesn't just end, or shame doesn't just end with shame. Shame leads to more pain. Nothing good comes out of shame. Okay, I'm going to take you a little bit longer here, but I want you to understand how our brain tries to solve shame. So in the middle is the real self, okay? Now, if you're told through the mirrors that your real self is no good, that you're less than, that you're not lovable, you develop the gray area outside of that, the other circle, which is the shame-based self, and that's the critic. And the critic is now in your brain that's constantly saying you're not good enough. And it puts yourself down, and it's very negative towards yourself. Okay, so that's there. But there's still a part of you that says, I want to be loved. I want to be respected. How do I do that? So, only solution is this. I can't show them my real self because they'll reject me and abandon me like mom and dad. I have to do the third circle, a persona. And that's the mask that you start to wear. If I act this way, maybe people will like me. If I act this way, maybe people will respect me. So now you have a third person. You've got the real self, the critic self, and now the personas that you wear. But then you got a fourth circle that says, if only I was like this. The ideal self in your mind, that if you were like this, you would be perfectly happy. Everybody would love you. Everybody would respect you. It's a fantasy, but it's in your thinking. If only I was like this, all my problems would be solved. Now, here's the problem. You got that critic person? Guess what it's constantly doing? It's comparing you to the ideal self, which is an unrealistic standard. You're never going to attain it. So it compares what you're doing day by day with this ideal self. And what's the conclusion it's drawing? You're not good enough. So what you just have in your brain is a system now that looks like it's solving your shame, but it's actually reinforcing your shame. You think you're finding a way to feel better, but the critic says, oh, you didn't meet the mark. You failed. Oops, you didn't meet it. You failed. You're this terrible, less than person. And so shame starts to feed off itself. So I want you to think of your parents up at the top, you underneath that, and your parents are being neglectful, critical, abusive, all the things that we just described. So what is happening is you got the yellow square of the brain, okay? So as you grow up with your parents are giving you these messages, and what are you doing? You're filing them away in your brain. As you get older, you don't even need your parents to say anything anymore. When you do something, your brain just says, you loser, and they repeat all the things that your parent said. So your parents once criticized you, but guess what happened as you grew up? You took your parents and stuck them into your brain, so we call it an internal parent is now in your brain, and it's a critic. So regardless of what you do, it will never be good enough to your brain. So it's another way that shame sets up systems to prevent you from ever escaping shame. Because now you have your parents living in your head, judging everything you do with a shame message. Another way to understand that is as you grow up as a child, your parents said you're too sensitive. So you say, I hate that about myself. And you say, I wish I could just find a way to cut that out of myself and throw it away. So you say, I'm just going to shut that part of me down. I'll never be sensitive again. I hate that about myself. And then a little while longer, you're so angry, nobody likes to be around you. Oh, so now I hate my anger. I wish I could just get rid of my anger. And you shut that part of yourself down. Over time, guess what's happening? You're hating more and more of yourself. You're wishing you could take those parts, shut them away in a closet, and never have to deal with them again. So you are taking your parents' messages and now you're shaming yourself. You're keeping it going. And that's the challenge with shame. What's the difference between shame and guilt? Very important question. Guilt is about what you do. Shame is about who you are. Guilt is about actions. Shame is about identity. Guilt is actually a wonderful system where we have this thing called a conscience that if we do something that violates love, we feel pain. So if we tell a lie, if we cheat somebody, cheat on somebody, steal, something bugs us. That's guilt. It was designed to be a good system that was to say, are you in enough pain yet to smarten up and change your behavior? To get back to telling the truth, to being honest. So guilt's a wonderful system to correct unloving behavior and make it loving again. So guilt is resolvable. Shame is not resolvable. It is saying you're not good enough and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to live with that identity and all the emotions you feel around that identity. So shame is the problem area because you can't find a way to fix it. Now I got to add false guilt because in complex trauma families, your conscience was often misguided or miseducated. So dad was saying, you're selfish for wanting to play baseball, and you go, it's wrong to play baseball, bad me. That's a misguided conscience, but now you feel guilt every time you want something. And so part of recovery is learning true guilt from false guilt. Okay, final thing. Once you have a lot of shame, and then you do something wrong, you get guilt, right? But what does guilt do now? I did something bad, I am bad. So guilt now feeds shame. So if you got lots of shame, I don't feel good enough, I'm bad, I'm not lovable, you steal from somebody, you feel guilt, but then you go, oh, that just proves how bad I am. So those feed each other.